All right, so we continue to discuss the budget and we get straight into it. We do have the minority leader here, Mr. Kelvon Morris, and of course we continue with this very important discussion about our spending, particularly here in Tobago. Of course, we are all happy that we got the largest allocation in Tobago. Welcome, Mr. Morris, and of course let's get your take on the allocation, historic, and we are all happy. However, accountability and transparency is critical. Give us an overview as to what happened on Monday.
Of course, Brother Bill, let me say good morning to you, good morning to all of Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago. And yes, we saw on Monday declared by the Minister of Finance a 5% allocation for the people of Tobago, which really is about $2.96 billion. And quite, of course, as any Tobagoan, and I'm sure we all welcome any addition in terms of more money for Tobago, because it means ultimately, if managed properly, it will redound to the benefit of all of us. However, what I wanted to do as well, because as I said initially, the devil is really in the details.
Good.
And, you know, so it is properly well documented and reported the most money Tobago would have received by percentage in any given allocation. But what is important is that Tobago has, especially during this term of this administration, every year on year would have received increases. This year, quite interestingly, we did not get the details of where the increase is going. So we know you have about $400 million additional. But when we do the review and the analysis of the information, what we recognize is that the increase is on the recurrent side. So what you have last time around, we got about $2.3 billion in recurrent. That has been increased to about $2.7 billion. But interestingly, which the Chief Secretary, the Secretary of Finance failed to tell Tobagonians, that on the development side, which is the side you Tobagonians know, we all have been clamoring that needs a bit more bolstering, because we have always said Tobago's development has been lagging behind Trinidad. And if we are, and if you listen to persons like Vanus James and so very respectable economists in Tobago, the argument has always been for Tobago to catch up with the development pace of Trinidad, what you need to do is almost, in a sense, inflate Tobago's development side. And rather than Tobago's development allocation being inflated or increased, for simple term, we saw a reduction. It was actually decreased. So it moved from $205 million, which the current administration has always articulated is insufficient, and it was reduced by a further $4.5 million to $201.5 million. And therefore, my concern is, the Secretary told us she did some negotiations on behalf of Tobago, and I'm wondering, as a skilled negotiator, if any aspect of Tobago's allocation required some increase, would have been on the development side. So why you as the Secretary accepted an increase in recurrent, but also at the same time accepted a decrease in the area that you need to be increased the most? So that is of concern to me. So I welcome the increase because it means more money on the recurrent side. But at the same time, I am equally concerned that Tobago's allocation when it comes to the development of the island has been decreased.
All right, so let's break down the thing. Yesterday, Petela and Roberts, your colleague, was here. Petela.
Daniel Benwo, because we have two Petela.
All right, Mrs. Benwo. All right, so let's come now. We would normally get in the Trinidad and Tobago budget allocation for Tobago. They would break it down. They would tell you how much for recurrent. They did what this government did was just give you a blanket figure, and you feel you get plenty money. But when you do some subtraction, let me subtract for recurrent, and you quote it without looking at any paper. It means that you're doing your work. Last year allocation for recurrent was 2.37 billion. Subtract that from the 3 point something billion, and you're going to end up with not even you would not get $1 billion plus, you know.
Yeah.
It would fall below.
Yeah.
Right, so hold on. Right, so let me come there. We did not hear about the allocation for CPEP. We know there's a conspiracy to get rid of CPEP totally. However, the Tobago CPEP, all right, so CPEP and URP, normally in the national budget, you hear the minister say X amount for CPEP, X amount for URP. All right, so they're done with CPEP in Trinidad. In Tobago, when we take away, let me do that, I say, subtraction, when we take away from what is allocated generally, when you do your maths or your little arithmetic, and you take away this large amount for recurrent, for CPEP and odd, what is left for development? Did you do that? And you have a figure for us? Let's speak.
So, Brother B, and that's why I said the devil is in the details. And I also said the budget was seasoned with some deceit and deception. Because, of course, once you hear 5%, and then remember when we talked earlier in terms of expectation, I told you this government is very tricky. So they will lump the figures because they did it in the mid-year review where, remember when Tobago only got 32 million, which was the lowest, but they added a loan, which was 102 million, and then they told us, well, Tobago is getting 136. So again, what they did, that's why you could now quote this 3.7 billion, is that usually in any given year, the ministries, whether it be through CAS and all the other ministries, will always spend money in Tobago. So they lumped whatever they plan to spend, which the THA will never see and don't even have a clue if it was actually done. They lumped that with the THA's allocation and then said, well, look, Tobago got 3 points. And they did that for a specific reason. Because at the same time, we all know that around this year, last year, Brother B, there was a bill, historic bill that came to the Parliament where Tobago was guaranteed, not begging, you don't have to negotiate, it was to be guaranteed 6.8%. And we need to take anything that Tobago gets in that context because 6.8% of this $59 billion budget meant that without even having to lift a finger, we in Tobago, as the THA, would have received $4 billion. And that $4 billion, Brother B, represents, if you do the comparison between the $2.9 billion that we are receiving now, is $1 billion in additional revenue Tobago to receive. And it's also important to take that figure into context because Tobago actually asked, right, begged for $1 billion for development. A way to understand. So we begged for $1 billion. I'm coming back to your point now. We asked the central government, we said we needed $1 billion to do all the development things in Tobago. We only got $201.5 million. For CPEP and URP, we asked for $91 million for URP. And for CPEP, $40 million. Brother B, I've looked at all the figures, all the allocation in all the estimates, and I have not seen to this date any allocation for CPEP or URP, which means, Brother B, that this central government has not allocated any money, and it means, therefore, where you have a reduction already in development and no money for CPEP and URP, the question we all have to ask is, what will happen to all the things that we said we wanted to do under development, and what will happen to CPEP and URP?
All right, so Daddy would have given us our allocation.
Yes.
Boy, take this money here, and I'll let deal with all you have to do in Tobago. Mister, I want to bring this, though, to the conversation about Tobago's allocation. We have a country to run, Mr. Morris. Tobago's allocation is the smallest in comparison to ministries in Trinidad. When that money comes here, we have to bust up in our divisions. Trinidad, our ministry, we have division. The people from education was here, we're talking education. Education get 8 point something billion. And boil it down, the closest to what Tobago allocation is to what happens in Trinidad is agriculture, who I want something billion to spend. Can we stop the argument about percentage?
But
So a brilliant mind, and I had to give him his respect. Dr. Vanos James, said, Brother B, if we see down right here, for some reason, I don't know why he ain't coming, we have a real conversation. And he said, based on what we have within the Tobago's piece, we're supposed to be getting an equal share of the pie. Can we stop begging for percentage when we examine the percentage? It's barely enough to pay salaries and to take care of what we call recurrent expenditure. And why is it that we are including recurrent expenditure in allocation? When you go home, and not you, but me, when I go home with my salary, my wife would say, this is for, you can't touch the money there, you can't take a beer from it there, because we have to pay light bill, we have to pay all the bills and so on. So that money there, you can't include that in your money for a pretty dress or a development project that she would want. Suppose she want to put on a nice bumpsy and it costs in X amount and we have to go to the surgeon to do it. The point I'm making is, can we come to that? We could debate all we want about allocation and foolishness, when the fact of the matter is, we are getting a percentage. Can we have the conversation where we get what is rightfully ours based on our oil and gas and all the other cases of what we earn as to how Tobago gets its allocation? Can we go there, Mr. Morris?
Brother B, you are spot on, and I'm saying these arguments is what really compel this guaranteed 6.8, and of course, you know, there was a Fiscal Review Commission that also would have kicked in so that if we had any major project, like we say we want to build a marina, etc., that would have come in to assist. So I'm saying that is why it's important to take whatever we got in this context. And again, you touch on an important point, because recurrent really deals with those day-to-day operational issues. But the real important part of Tobago's allocation is the development, because that tells you how are we going to grow the island's economy. And therefore, I found it passing strange that the Chief Secretary will describe what we got as this sweetheart deal, when on the development side, the allocation was actually reduced. And therefore, it means we were in an even more difficult pickle in terms of moving Tobago forward. Because when I was here the last time, we spoke about Studley Park Quarry. And this is what I've always said as well. More than the money, Brother B, is about management. Because for the last couple of years, we have been seeing when they do their reprioritization, talking about, well, we were told Studley Park Quarry needs about a $60 million investment so it can get to produce in an efficient way so that we can get the kind of exports, etc., and get the foreign exchange coming in. Because I was told by the former chairman of Studley Park Quarry, if Studley Park does well, Studley Park is a $1 billion revenue generating. Annually. And we are sitting on a gold mine. And you have to ask yourself why after 4 years, we have done absolutely nothing to improve Studley Park Quarry's circumstances after PNM gave them on a platter. Because you'll remember, you have to give credit where credit is due. Mr. Charles took Studley Park by the bull, and there were difficult decisions to be made. He had it aligned to a private enterprise where it can function and become more efficient. And therefore, to see where it is today is quite unfortunate. It's about management of resources. Look at our tourism, Brother B.
All right. Okay. All right. So what you have done there is actually carry the conversation where we want to go. Because we could debate figures or me, no figures, man. I am a realist, and we want to deal with the realistic. What you're speaking to there is contributing to the GDP.
Correct.
All right, so let's look at what is offered. And let me go to what we can accept as good for Tobago. The opening or the reopening, the intent to open the airport in the second quarter. I have a problem with the second quarter. However, let's go now to the revenue earning capacity, or what Tobago can contribute to the GDP, the gross domestic product. That's what that abbreviation stands for. Let's go there. You just mentioned the quarry. Flights are now going to come directly from the United States, according to the Minister of Finance. I don't know how he's going to make that happen. However, if we do have an up and running airport in advance, so that so by Christmas, we should have visitors from Trinidad, from the United States directly to Tobago, if it is that what he's predicting is realized, and what will that do? Are you satisfied that the timeline for the opening of the airport for the second quarter and that direct flights that can bring and contribute to our GDP, it means therefore hotels and high-end hotel has to be established. Let's speak to the whole thing from that side.
And Brother B, this is where I'm concerned, because we have an administration that, yes, they give a nice punchline, just like how we get a nice kind of glossed over figure that we have more money. But where is the plan, Brother B? It has to be cohesive and comprehensive, because the airport has to go in hand with a vision to move Tobago's tourism forward. And it means, therefore, whereas you have the access, well, the plan to bring the access, which is the airport, you now need the airlines, but the airlines will still look at what you have on the ground in terms of accommodation. But I could tell you of a real situation at this time with the carnival. You have even trying to bring in artists. You have one major hotel in Tobago right now. Because when you look at the other hotels, they don't, many artists are saying, I don't want to stay there. And therefore, imagine if we are to really, this hotel, this airport could move over 3 million people at any given time. That is the capacity it's built for. But when you look at our rooms, Brother B, in terms of quality rooms, it is unacceptable. Where is the plan to incentivize, whether it be at the local level or the international level, hotel and hotel operators to come, even the ones we have now? How are we going to let, and that's why I'm saying, I said it in my last press briefing, both the Chief Secretary and the Secretary of Tourism, they traveled to something called World Travel Market and ITB. The ITB is in Germany, World Travel Market is in London. This is where you have all the major players in tourism, from hotel, airlines to operate. They've been going there 3 years now, Brother B. And after 3 years, where is the reason? And this is why I'm saying Tobago needs serious, and I'm not telling people who to choose. But at the end of the day, we need serious managers who can have the proper conversation. Brother B, these people go out. You go from island to island, country to country. You're seeing things that are happening out there. And you're telling me after 4 years, you have not come back, not even a zip line, not even a zip C, nothing you have added.
All right. Staying with the tourism sector, that can contribute to the GDP. We're going to come back to the quarry and all of that just now. Bread and breakfast are boasting that they are overbooked or they're booked out and so on. However, the Minister of Finance is saying people who are placed to rent, they're going to pay a tax. And we were encouraged in Tobago. I myself started to think that if we are events destination, then maybe I need to knock up a 2-bedroom and then to make a little thing. But there's a season that is not going to be as busy as this one, and it go dry, and I still have to pay light bill and phone bill. But when they now have imposed this tax on rentals, Mr. Morris, the little Tobagonian who's struggling to maintain a little bread and breakfast when there are nobody there, and for those people who rent to pay their mortgage and so on, now we are confronted with this tax that really, and if we are to really approach it from the standpoint of property tax, we know citizens are required to pay property tax. What is happening in this regard? Do you accept that only people who are placed to rent should pay tax, or should it be a general? And why is it? Are they afraid to just accept that we need to collect property tax, or is that they want it to sound like a P&M thing? Let me hear from you.
Brother B, and that's why I said this budget is seasoned with deceit and deception, because what they are actually doing is punishing ambition. To be average Tobagonian.
Punishing ambition?
They are punishing ambition because we in Tobago always will, as in a way to sort, we were encouraged, as you rightfully say, the Castara model, where you pour on a little downstairs and you rent it out to the backpackers or the Trinidadian that come for a weekend. And you would do that as a means of earning extra income. And you would do that also as just understanding that you are expanding your home. And so forth. So, and therefore, when we, in one instance, we see that as ambition, we see that as us being, innovative and doing the Tobago entrepreneurial spirit. But at the same time now, the government is saying to you, because we feel you making a little extra thing on your downstairs or that room that you put on, we are now going to tax you, and we are taxing you in a way that redistributes. Whereas we should be encouraging your ambition, we are now telling you we are going to take away from you because we don't want to spread the thing across the board. So if you realize this tax, this property tax, which it is now taxing you for the man that's supposed to pay his tax And for you, who would have ordinarily paid you, because this is 3.5%. Remember, under the PNM, it was about 2.5%. So everybody will have paid it 2.5%. So you now are paying 1.5% extra. So you are, well, 1% extra. So it means that you are paying something else for the man that they choose not to tax. So that's why I'm saying they are, in fact, rather than encouraging ambition, they are punishing ambition.
The Chief Secretary would have said when the property tax was promoted and so on, he said Tobagonians should not pay property tax. I don't know if it was a political thing to attack the Prime Minister then, Keith Rowley. Now the same thing has come around. What are you calling on him to do, given that this ambition that can be stifled by this tax that they're imposing on people who are renting? What do you want to say to the Chief Secretary on? Are you expecting him to call on his on the Prime Minister to treat with Tobago differently in that regard? Because his justification for not paying the property tax was that Tobago land title issues is the same thing. What do you say to your colleague?
Well, Brother B, the point is I've asked my Chief Secretary to maintain the same energy, because you would recall everything that the Chief Secretary actually criticized under the PNM. He's now conveniently accepting, and this is but one other issue, because you would recognize, as you rightfully say, the Chief Secretary encouraged Tobagonians that the matter of land titles haven't been properly settled, so the government have no business taxing you. And in this situation we just described, where we have as an issue with room stock, and where we should be encouraging to, because as well, this is not just the small man. Remember, most of Tobago's room stock is attached to Airbnb, villas and those kind of things. You are now basically taxing those persons. So persons may not be so incentivized to continue to add villas and all these things into the space. And it means then it is going to affect the tourism product, because we would not have the kind of rooms to offer, to leverage. Exactly. So you see, so the Chief Secretary, you're correct, has a significant role in speaking to, and I don't just say the government, but to his friends, because he has accepted that they have a close relationship, that in the Tobago scenario, this is going to have a debilitating effect. In fact, there's another one. We may take it, because some people believe alcohol is just alcoholics.
We come into certain things, just no, wait, no man, take a time. All right, look. So let me deal with and finish with this whole getting people to the island. This is the we heard from the Band Leaders Association.
Yes,
that flights with CAL. No, CAL, for those, is a state-owned, heavily subsidized airline. There was talk to also by the Chief Secretary to provide another airline to pick up the slack, as it were, from CAL. All right, so that we ain't gonna see that happen maybe until Christ come. But let me deal with what we have presently. The band leaders are calling on CAL. CAL is really can be instructed by the government, given that it is state-owned. What do you say to the people in authority, the government, and of course the Chief Secretary, given that he has a direct line to the Prime Minister, to instruct maybe, can they do that though? Given that CAL is run by the CEO and all those people, but however, it is owned by the Trinidad and Tobago government. The fact that we have problems with flight, we have 12 flights per day, and they say that will not suffice, given the demand. On a busy season, what should happen? What kind of conversation should we have with the state airline that can provide enough travel back and forth? What would be your suggestion if you had to speak to the Prime Minister?
Well, Brother B, first thing, I'm happy to see that for once, the current administration, THA, is recognizing that CAL's problem is not a PNM problem. Because you remember how they sold it. And now that their friends are
Rowley not there anymore.
We buying not there no more.
Yeah.
So he at least the car cost him no more for CAL.
Yeah.
And the problem still exists, to the point where we're seeing band leaders, and it's not just the band leaders, the promoters having the same conversation, the bread and breakfast people telling you they book out, but some of the bookings are in danger because the people can't get flights. Brother B, this carnival is something that we know was going to happen since last year. And I'm saying, one, well, let us stay with CAL. In the first instance, the conversations have to go beyond simply telling CAL, add on flights. You have to come with data. in the first instance, because Cal would have to know if this is commercially viable, etc. And I'm also saying we could have been a little more unique. I'm saying this, and this is why it's about management in a Brother B. Had I been in a position of where they are, I would have got together with the band leaders, with our promoters, with our breakfast people, and we could have tell Cal we want to charter about
charter. Right.
Yeah,
Good. State it. Right. So in regards to providing the service, if the airline is overwhelmed and so on, there are flights that can be chartered. How does and so where does that does that conversation how does that fit in now? Given the ninth hour, can we charter flights outside of Cal because they might not have the ATRs to bring the people? How does that work, and how can that work given the demand right now?
Well, I could tell you, I know for a fact that Cal does chartered flights. So that conversation could have happened, and people, you package it. So when you tell a man, all right, for 3 fets, play mass, get your stay at this place, and your flight, you pay this amount of money. And you basically sell that to people. So those would have been bought out. So Cal know we have, and those flights are about 68 seats. So they would have known clearly, okay, we have these predictable flights. So you move, let me say 500 people there. Then the next opportunity is, because Tobago, you remember when it used to have, I think it's Tobago Airlines or so we used to call it, with Mr. Who down by Clovis, Mr. Clovis. We used to lease plane, wet lease plane. Remember there's a time we had challenges, and the THA itself did bring in some planes. I think it was some either Spanish people, we used to see them on the flight, right? So THA by themselves can also lease planes. I'm also saying, Brother B, we could have been more, we could have got a cruise ship that out, because another situation is accommodation. So the cruise ship would have take care of your accommodation. It would have also take care of some of your passenger needs as well. Because if people know, I could party, come down from Barbados, come down to Trinidad, and then come across to Tobago, stay there, party, come back on my boat, and so forth. So Brother B is about being innovative, and it pains me to see such a young, supposed to be intelligent executive that is so bereft, so short of ideas, Brother B, to really move the thing.
Okay, so let's go now to the accommodation sector, which the Minister of Finance spoke about, and that's Elephant Tree, that is supposed to be ready by I think it's next year, and of course the construction of Marriott. Obviously, this would be undertaken by central government. The Marriott, I don't know what the arrangement is, but let's speak to room stock and quality room stock. You just spoke to some artists. Magdalena Grande got cut it for them. Comfort Inn won't cut it for them. They need high-end.
No, well, I didn't want. I try not to call. So let but we know that we don't have enough.
So let's talk to what was promoted by the Minister of Finance in dealing with. We that Marriott Hotel was supposed to start construction, I think, some years ago. Well, let's talk to those high-end rooms. Obviously, we didn't hear a word about Sanders. It gave him that. All right, let me forget Sabi, because it was a P&M thing. Are we getting the politics in the whole Tobago's development drive in the tourism sector? Are you sensing that the whole idea of the marinas that are supposed to be should have been constructed already? Let's talk that sector that accommodates and contributes to the GDP, because we're talking budget here. Let's go.
Well, Brother B, the first thing we have to appreciate, as you rightfully say, and this is the first step to recovery is admittance. We have an accommodation crisis in Tobago at this point. And if we accept that, then it means that we have to be a little more open to accepting that for people to come and invest, they would invest where they believe they could make money. And therefore, we to us Tobagonians, we have to realize there's a balance that has to be met in preservation of our environment, etc. But at the same time, we have to also know that some things we may have to kind of give up. And therefore, as the assembly, when I listen to conversations, I don't get the sense that they understand the value of what has to be compromised to get development. And therefore, you know, when you look at the conversation, even going on with Marriott, because I've been to some of those, and the kind of pushback you are getting from some of the residents, etc., is that you really, if you are an investor, Brother B, it's very difficult for you to feel comfortable going forward with your million, because, for example, Marriott, it is somebody who is taking over $500 million of their own money to come to Tobago to invest in a plant that they are hoping will bring people to island and then they make a profit. But yet at the same time, you're getting all this pushback to the point that after 2 years, it is still very difficult to get all the licensings, etc. And I don't know, when you can go to St. Vincent, look how far Sandals was able to set up in St. Vincent, to the point that they are now going to build up beaches. Look at St. Kitts, Marriott is over there. And so when people look at how difficult, and this is what Tobago has to understand, because if you are looking and the environment is very incestuous, so you might say, I want to go down to Tobago and build a hotel. Somebody tell you, don't go down there, but then people no want no develop. You know, I'm just saying, in terms of, so we have to be so careful as to the messages being sent both at the administrative level, whether we are serious about encouraging development, because Tobago absolutely need it.
Very good. You're talking foreign investment. You didn't call in the wood. I got
Yes.
it because I had to look good too. It's not a song intelligence,
Yes.
right? But clearly, I know we are. No, the whole question of foreign investment has to do with our land license issue. And investors would be interested in incentives. What was bandied about with the standards is that the government was going to pay for everything, and then they get their exemption.
Well, I just want to, let me make some clarification, because I was part of the last conversation, and that conversation started on a clean slate. So it wasn't that Sandals, you have to go down to that area, Boko estate or whatever, which some people label no man's or whatever. It was a clean conversation. Sandals clearly stating that their model has always been that they invest their own money.
Very good.
And that was clear. So it wasn't...
But I was just talking about the last time.
Yeah, so it's good for the public also to have the information.
So let's speak to that whole question of foreign investment. You go to any of those developed islands, when you look around, it's only foreigners there. From Unit, let's go Antigua. There are a number of foreign investors in Antigua, live there because they own lands there and so on. What do we need to do from a foreign investment and the benefits that can be derived, or the earnings that contribute to the gross domestic product? What do we need to do? There's issues with land license and all of that inhibits or prevent a fella from saying, no, you're going to say, I can't, over 20 years, land leases maybe. Let's speak to those areas of investment that requires the foreigner that comes into the island, bring their brand and so on. Speak to that. Marriott is one of them. That will come.
Well, one of the things, Brother B, which we can do in the first instance is to have investment zones. So that way it protects, even the locals. So there are areas, would be designated as investment zones. We are leveraging to investors. So those areas, you can have people buying up the lands. But there are some areas you would want to ensure that you preserve for the locals, for our future generations to come, that they also, that we won't be foreigners in our own lands.
Excellent.
Right? But again, as I said, and then you go back to the whole issue of autonomy, Brother B, which I didn't hear one word of in the budget. And I found it quite strange that the Chief Secretary, who brought a motion that said he was getting the government to prioritize autonomy, not a word was said about that. But it goes back to our ability to make our own laws for the good governance of us here in Tobago, and that would benefit us in Tobago. So, because once you're treating with land license, for foreigners, you also still have to treat with this perennial issue of our land ownership. For folks like us, for our own Tobagonians, because many of us still live on estates that have not, in terms of land titles, have not been properly passed over. So both has to go hand in hand.
Very good. All right. So I just want to, I got from Petelan Roberts, Benoit yesterday.
Yeah.
Ms. Roberts will come in a minute. But And we spoke about the fear of losing CPEP, because if the Prime Minister instruct the THA to get rid of CPEP too, I wonder what kind of pushback you will get. And I'm worried that we will lose the CPEP. However, CPEP is a burden, quote unquote. And let me face the reality. On the state, the question is, how do we make it more productive? How do we convert it? We have our agricultural sector that is where I'm coming now, that can do more. This whole question of food security is a talk. We have never really invested in agriculture in any meaningful way. There are entities that are existing now. Back not so long ago in Botanics Garden there, that was an agricultural station. We have one in Louisville. We have one, where else? In Hope Farm. And Hope Farm used to produce milk to feed children. I was one of the children who got milk from Hope Farm. Cow milk, fresh cow milk. Livestock, Mr. Morris. These people who are employed in CPEP can be converted to proper employment. By that I mean they're getting health surcharge, you name everything.
Yeah.
And they are employed in the agricultural sector to produce and to ensure food security. How are we talking that? They will get the instruction. Let's put our head on it. They're eventually going to eradicate CPEP. What suggestion can you give? We talk figures just now. The reality is there are people that may be on the breadline soon in Tobago. What would you say to government and the THA to prevent that from happening by absorbing these people in the agricultural sector that give them dignity in their employment by working in the agricultural divisions in Tobago to produce food?
Well, Brother B, and you're so correct. Based on the evidence in front of us, it is not when. Well, basically, it's just a matter of time before the chickens come home to roost when it comes to CPEP and URP, because we know at the national level they are winding it down. We have seen in the budget no allocation for Tobago. So no matter how much they dice it, they will tell us no, because we know there's an election, so they wouldn't want the fear to kick in. But they must be real and level with people. And as you're saying, being real and level with people, then you can plan. Because as you rightfully said, agriculture is one of those areas in Tobago, if we do it properly, could be another, not just for food security, but for revenue generation for the entire island and the country. And if you have all these people, because CPEP and URP combined probably employs over 1,000 Tobagonians. And think about, because the money is already being spent, if you can redeploy them into a productive sector, such as agriculture, I'm not saying that has to be the policy, but if that is something that can be done, it will redound to the benefit of all of Tobago. But you have to be honest in the first place, because I can tell CPEP people and URP people without a shadow of a doubt, what is being said to me where I sit is that there are already promises and compromises being made that we will hold we hand until the elections, and after the elections, we will have to do the inevitable.
Very good. All right. We got to leave it there. We want to thank you for being here. And of course, we covered a lot.
Yes, in very short period.
Very well done. All right.